been This Week in Batman. Lots and lots of Bat books, including some that I didn't pick up. Before we get into what I read this week, I just have a couple quick bookkeeping things to go over with you guys. First of all, the cover 8 Gremlin at my comic book shop hit again, and I was not able to pick up Catwoman issue 36. They only had the variant cover. Once again, I decided to hold off on picking it up. So that will come to you guys at a later date, probably next week. I think I'll be able to get to my alternative comic book shop to pick it up. However, to fill the gap, I was able to finally pick up my copy of Detective Comics 1043, so I'll be reviewing that for you guys today. Also among the books I didn't pick up this week were Batman Catwoman number 8, as it's a title that started before I started doing these reviews. I haven't been picking it up. I am really not interested in going back to the Tom King era of Batman anytime soon, so this is a series I might read someday down the line, but right now it's just super off my radar, not really interested. I also skipped Catwoman A Lonely Place issue 1, which is a large format DC Black Label book by Cliff Chang. I had it in my hand, I debated about it. There's just a lot of Batman books to choose from right now, and I just didn't really feel like spending the money on it. So that leads me to what books I did pick up this week. First up, Legends of the Dark Knight number 6. I never actually picked up a copy of issue 5. It never showed up at my usual comic book shop. When I called to have them put Catwoman 36 on hold, they did have a copy of issue 5 for me, so I am going to pick that up when I pick up Catwoman 36. In the meantime, I did give issue 6 a read since these have been pretty much standalone stories. You get 2 stories in this one. It's making it feel a little bit like Batman Urban Legends, where it's just like a lot of Batman stories beyond really what you need. Not that these were bad, but they don't have the same hook that the Chris Robertson arc did in those first 3 issues. So I'll circle back, read issue 5, see how I'm feeling about it, but I am kind of leaning towards dropping this in the long term. The other big non-continuity book I got this week that I was really excited to pick up was Batman vs. Bigby, issue number 2. And this book did not disappoint. If you aren't picking it up yet, probably worth waiting for the trade. I know at least a couple people have mentioned to me that they're not picking it up because they want to read it in trade. I think that's definitely the way to go. A little bit of a slow burn to get started. The first issue was very heavy on Batman. This issue was a little bit more even between the two of them and led to the big event that they've been building up to that's going to cause them to either split apart or team up. It's kind of unclear right now to know, but all in all, Bill Willingham's writing in this is fantastic. It just has that Fables flair to it. And the art inside also really, really solid. I'm really digging the art. I'd really love it if this art team went on to do something else in the Batman universe, because it's just a really unique style, different from what we've seen across most of the Bat titles that are in regular continuity, at least right now. So anyway, strongly recommend this book if you aren't picking it up. As for the main continuity Batman books that came out this week, we got 4, all of which tied into Fear State. As mentioned, there was Catwoman 36, which I'll be reviewing next week, most likely with you guys. And then we also got Batman Secret Files Peacekeeper 1, issue 1. This is written by James Tynion. We got Nightwing 85 by Tom Taylor. Pretty excited to see where this story goes. And then we got part 4 of Fear State itself in Batman 115. So let's dig in. We'll take a look at Detective and then the rest of the Fear State offerings for this week and see how the second half of Fear State is faring. Hopefully a little bit better than the first half, but we'll just have to read and find out. So kicking things off is the weeks late Detective Comics 1043. Sorry it took me so long to get this review to you guys. Upon reading this, first of all, it's nice having Dan Mora on art. As we get into some of the other reviews, you'll note that a lot of these are not the typical artist-writer teams that we've been enjoying since Infinite Frontier launched. But this does maintain that Dan Mora artwork, although I will say it does feel a little bit rough around the edges compared with months past. It might just be that the coloring is a little less vibrant than it has been in the past, but even so, Even like with the double page spread, it just looks a little rough around the edges for whatever reason, at least to my eye. That said, still looks good, no real complaints. And as for the Detective Comics story, I gotta say, I'm really digging it. Like, this feels more like Batman than the main Batman title does, because you actually have a Batman-centered story in this. So this story takes place pretty early in the whole Fear State event. Batman finds himself having to rescue the mayor, who is someone that obviously has it out for the Cape Crusader. So it makes for an exciting dynamic between the two of them as he rescues him, and I'm excited to see kind of how it plays out. Also, we get the final part of this build up to Task Force Z, which is also a backup story that I really enjoyed. Obviously, it's just teasing this whole Task Force C book that's going to be coming out, I think next month, maybe the end of this month, I don't remember for sure. Here we've got great Cliff Robertson art, so if you enjoyed his run on Legends of the Dark Knight, this is a great way to get that. And then also a large portion of it centers around Deb Donovan, who is kind of a noir style reporter working in Gotham City. She was introduced earlier in Mariko Tamaki's Detective Comics run, and I think she's a really interesting character, actually. Someone that I would hope ends up as a major player in this Task Force Z book, although I don't really get the feeling that's going to be the case, but she's really made this backup story a fun read. So definitely a solid backup story in a solid Batman. So Catwoman aside, since I haven't read it, the book I really recommend you guys start with this week when you're reading your Fear State books is Peacekeeper 1. This title takes place between issues 112 and 113, when Peacekeeper 1 gets a big dose of fear toxin and is running around the city completely lost and confused. This is all a framing narrative to bring you around to get the full Peacekeeper 1 backstory. So it's not necessarily essential that you read it first, but I did read it later and it felt like it just kind of broke with the flow of this week's books, which is why I recommend you go through it first. Ultimately, Peacekeeper 1 is a character I'm just not that interested in, and it seems to be, one of the characters they've spent more time developing than others. Basically to find out about Peacekeeper's backstory and how he was denied a place on the police force from Jim Gordon because he didn't trust their family. His character is referenced in Joker War as someone who is a hero of the Arkham Asylum incident, which you get to see sort of the other half of that story play out in this, which was kind of nice. I really enjoyed that moment when Commissioner Gordon kind of realizes he should have hired him. That was obviously months ago now. I can't remember if that was in Joker War proper, if it was kind of in the aftermath of it when they were dealing with the devastation. But Commissioner Gordon does have a line about it at some point in the main Batman title. I can't remember, it was too long ago. But I remember thinking that was kind of a poignant moment for Jim Gordon, so seeing them revisit that here was nice. But the reality is, there's nothing else about Peacemaker that just does that much for me. And I really question that they couldn't have found a way to combine Peacekeeper 1 and Peacekeeper X into the same character. It would just have given him more to do, because just having this character that's running around on fear toxin, ultimately to me just, I don't know, it's not that interesting. All in all, I would say if you're looking at what Fear State books to pick up, you're on a budget, this is one you can pretty safely skip. The most interesting thing that happened in it was digging into that Arkham Asylum backstory and Jim Gordon and his relationship with Sean Mahoney's family, which you pretty much already got in a prior issue. The next book in the Fear State lineup I would recommend you read this week is Batman 115. The reason for that is in the backstory. This backstory starts the first issue of Batgirls, part 1 of 3, and this explores Cassandra Cain and Stephanie Brown and what's going on with them, how they're trying to help support Oracle's war on the anti-Oracle. I don't want to spoil why you should read this first, but there is an event at the end of Nightwing that does tie back into what's going on here, which is why I would recommend you read Batman before you read Nightwing this week. As for the main goings-on in Batman 115, It was kind of a love it and a hate it issue. As far as the story goes, I will say things are starting to pick up a little bit now that Miracle Molly has identified what it is that Scarecrow is really up to and how he's going to use the Mind Machine to really mess up Gotham. It feels like things are kind of coming to a head. That said, there are a couple major caveats. First of all, what is going on with Queen Ivy? She just keeps hovering around in the background. It feels like ultimately the whole point of her subplot being someone who's underneath Gotham and is someone who has the potential to basically create a no man's land level event across the city, is really just something to distract the Peacekeepers with. And I just find myself questioning if that really was a necessary device to develop, or if they could have done something just a little bit simpler that would have taken up less pages and allowed them to focus on other things. On the positive side, from a story perspective, the banter between Batman and Miracle Molly in this, I found to be really, really nice. I think that the positivity that Miracle Molly brings to her relationship with Batman as they're trying to go back to the Unsanity Collective's base and figure out what's going on with his computer. She actually almost feels like Dick Grayson, which is really, really cool. There's this great moment when someone who's hopped up on fear toxin attacks Batman with these gauntlets that Miracle Molly made for him. And she's able to bring the guy's gauntlets down and tells Batman that all he now has to worry about is 400 pounds worth of a wall of muscle, which Batman's like, you know what, I've dealt with worse before. It's this great badass moment with Batman and a great moment with Miracle Molly. So that was really, really welcome. I thought that the last half of this book really shined because of what was going on with Miracle Molly and Batman together. So for what that's worth, that is definitely redeeming the Fear State story for me. The thing that's holding this book back more than anything this week, and you may have already guessed it, is the artwork. So it's unfortunately especially noticeable in the Miracle Molly Batman stuff, where they do have a substitute artist on the book. And it kind of looks like Jorge Jimenez did the layouts for this, because there is kind of a continuity to the stuff that's by him and the stuff that's not by him. Credit for the artwork, if I remember correctly, yeah, it goes to both artists equally. So it seems like there was a true collaboration between the two of them to get this book out. But that said, this like rough, very, very plain, very, very undetailed artwork really didn't match as well as I think they thought it was going to match with Jorge Jimenez's art proper. I don't understand why I need to get this book twice a week. I'd really rather just let it be monthly, give Jorge Jimenez enough time to get the art out so that you have a truly consecutive storyline with one artist. So that just leaves us with Nightwing 85, which was a book I was really looking forward to. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with this anti-Oracle. And excited to see Barbara Gordon back in action. A little bit nervous about where it's headed, but one more issue of this arc to go. We'll see what happens. Now, despite my anticipation, once again, I found myself with a little bit of a love-hate relationship with this book, similar to last month, partly because we still have the substitute artist again. It's fine. I didn't really have a problem with it, at least not as much as I did last week, maybe just because I'm more used to it now. But it's still just left a little bit to be desired. I just really like Bruno Redondo's art, and it's impossible to compete with it, really, if you boil it down. The other thing that was a little confusing was where the story starts. So, like, at the end of the last issue, Batgirl's suited up and she's ready to go take on the Anti-Oracle. I'm not sure if they referred to the Anti-Oracle as the Seer. I meant to go back and look, and I forgot to do it before I hit record. But now they're referring to the Anti-Oracle as Seer. And right off the top, we get to see who this Seer person looks like, or allegedly looks like. I think there's going to be somewhat of a twist in who the Seer actually is, because this appears to be really just an avatar for who the Seer actually is. And at the end of this issue, you get a sense that we are on the road to find out, you know, who the person behind the curtain actually is. Now, this is something that's not really that big of a deal, but I was a little annoyed that now we're referring to the Anti-Oracle as the Seer, because it just created unnecessary friction in the storytelling. When you're reading a lot of Batman books week to week, sometimes you miss things or you forget things. I feel a little silly about my I Am Batman review now from last week because he's dealing with the Seer as well, and at the time I didn't realize that was actually the Anti-Oracle. This issue a week later made it much more clear for me, so I'll have to go back and give that issue a second look now that I know that. But again, as I said, minor issue, not the biggest deal. At the heart of it, this book really boils down to being about Dick Grayson and Batgirl, which is really what I wanted to get out of the issue, so overall, I was satisfied with where that went. We get another flashback to young Dick and young Babs, which is great. I've really been enjoying Tom Taylor going back and exploring that time period a little bit more. And as they make their way across the city, they have a run-in with the Peacekeepers. And after dealing with a series of booby traps set by Scarecrow, we get the forbidden kiss between Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson with Tim Drake in the background saying, "Finally." Not sure how finally it is. I feel like we've been here before, but as far as current continuity between Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon goes, this felt very earned and was very satisfying. And I also felt like it maybe spells doom for what's going to happen in the next issue of Nightwing, but only time will tell. I'm not going to spoil the cliffhanger in this, just because it also spoils things in Batman, so it's not the craziest spoiler in the world, but just know there is a little bit of a spoiler at the end of this, and it does tie into Batman, so if you're reading one and not the other, this is 1 month where it's probably worth checking out. So all told, not a bad week for Batman comics at all. I think where things were lacking in the art department this week, it was greatly made up for in the story, which really is a nice change of pace because I've been annoyed with the story in Fear State so far. So now for these last couple months, they just gotta push it through and deliver on both fronts, which I'm hoping that they do. So all told, I would say it was actually a fairly good week for Batman books. The only one that I felt like really wasn't worth a pickup was Peacekeeper 1. Unless you're really into this character, I would say this is pretty easy to skip. But both Batman and Nightwing, while they didn't deliver in the art department, I felt like pretty solidly delivered in the story. Nightwing, with the interplay between Dick Grayson, Barbara Gordon, and Tim Drake, was very satisfying overall. And Batman 115, probably the best Batman Fear State title that they've done, and it really boils down to Tynion's writing of Miracle Molly and Batman, because again, the art didn't really deliver, but the two of those characters playing off each other really did for me. So if you like Miracle Molly, I think you'll be really satisfied with this issue. If you're not sure, or if you don't get what the big deal is, this might sell you, I don't know. But for me, all told, much better read than last month's and even the last couple months. So very happy that Batman 115 feels like it's bringing the Fear State story more on track than it has been. Now, all that Fear State talk aside, if I was going to recommend you pick up one book this month, it's not a Fear State book. It's Batman vs. Bigby. Absolutely love this read. If you're a Fables fan, you got to check it out. If you're waiting for the trade, get excited. In a few months, you're going to have a great read. If you like Fables, if you like Bill Willingham, he's delivering great work here, I would say. So with that, that concludes This Week in Batman. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.